Hello, hello, and welcome to Apple Jams, your Beatles and solo Beatles hangout. I'm so glad to see you here, so glad you could come. I have one little baby request, and that is, if you would, please me by smashing a like on this video and subscribing if you haven't already. That would really help me if you can. So my last video was looking at this, the Man on the Run soundtrack album. Now, if you watched that last video, you'll notice that yes, I still do have it, and yes, the cellophane is now off. I am true to my word. Now, I had many thoughts on that album, and I won't rerun that last video here. Just go and watch that last video if you've not seen it. In fact, even if you have seen it, go and watch that last video, and then watch it again, and then come back here. Are you back yet? It's a good video, right? I hope you didn't notice any dodgy editing. That'd be really embarrassing. So like I said, many thoughts. But the biggest one is that this album is slight. Only 50 minutes on CD, only tracks featured in the documentary, and only Paul McCartney or Wings material. I'll take this off now and move back over this side. I prefer it over this side. Meanwhile, on the documentary, we've got Beatles tracks, we've got John Lennon tracks, and if you listen very carefully, we've even got Led Zeppelin and Chuck Berry tracks and others, none of which feature on this CD. Now, if you're like me and that left you feeling somewhat shortchanged, well, have I got news for you? Because it turns out that an alternative version of this album exists. An exhaustive and comprehensive version featuring every single track on the Man on the Run soundtrack. And I know this because I made it. Yes, Apple Jammers, I love you so much that I spent my precious, finite time on this earth compiling a Spotify playlist of every track in the documentary. Click on the link in the description to check out the playlist on Spotify. Sorry if you don't have Spotify. It is free. I think if you don't pay for it, you have to listen on shuffle and obviously listen to adverts for mattresses every 5 minutes. After adding the additional songs to the pre-existing track list, the runtime comes out at a whopping 4 hours and 7 minutes. Okay, that is ridiculous. How many sides of vinyl would that even be? I genuinely don't know. Somebody can tell me in the comments. Even on CD, I reckon that's, 3 or 4 discs? Nobody's buying that. But I have been incredibly pedantic with the song choices, which explains why the soundtrack is now at more than double the length of the actual film. Let's look at some of those additions in a bit more detail. I slot in the Beatles' The End because it literally opens the documentary. It's quite odd to hear a song like The End at the beginning, but in a weird way, it does make sense. This is a documentary that starts with the end of the Beatles, after all. At the end of the end, it's a start of a journey to a much better place. Be honest, come on. Next up is Mama Miss America and Sing Along Junk, which I'm sure you'll have noticed. They also use the crescendo and the final chord a couple of times, I think, from A Day in the Life, so of course that goes in. Then there's Hey Diddle, The Lovely Linda, Don't Cry Little Baby outtake is in there. Anyone familiar with the McCartney Archive edition will be familiar with that one. I don't think Ooh You is in there, but you can't have the Don't Cry Baby outtake without Ooh You, so that just has to go together. So go do that ooh you that you do so well. Anyone a Blazing Saddles fan? No? Just me? Sweet Little 16 is on the credits at the end, but I had to really listen hard to find it in the documentary. In the end, I think I heard it when there's the section about 15 minutes into the documentary when he's talking about his songwriting process and how he likes to lock himself away and have secret thoughts and that. It does sound like Paul's singing it, but I'm not aware of a Sweet Little 16 cover available on record that Paul's done. If anyone knows of one, please do feel free to let me know. In the absence of that, I go with the Chuck Berry version on this. Eleanor Rigby is on the credits as well. I never hear it in the documentary, so I haven't included it here. It must be in one of those montages. Montages? What's the audio version of a montage? Sound collage? Yeah, okay, it's in one of the sound collages. Anyway, it must be so brief so as to be insignificant, so I've not put it on the list. Summer's Day Song, however, is very prominent, so on that goes. Maybe I'm Amazed is up next, followed by Uncle Albert, Heart of the Country, Eat at Home, and Monkberry Moon Delight. Ram On is on the soundtrack as well, a little further down the line, so half of Ram's on this thing. Glasses is used quite effectively underneath Paul explaining his Alan Klein dream. That's about 27 minutes in. Glasses isn't available separately from Hot as Sun, so you can't have one without the other, so both of them go on the soundtrack. The Beatle nerds amongst you will have noticed that John and Yoko are sat singing the Lennon part of I've Got a Feeling, you know, the Everybody Had a Hard Year, bit. It's like quite a nice little acoustic version, to be fair. That goes in from the Beatles. And of course, the spiteful and vicious How Do You Sleep? The Led Zeppelin song in the TV section is the Lemon Song from Led Zeppelin 2. But I'm afraid you and many dads like you may not have heard of them. Go Now goes in. What a great Moody Blues song. Happy to include that. There's a Wings rendition on Wings Over America, but I've gone with the original Moody Blues version. A couple of outtakes, African Yeah Yeah from Wildlife, Little Richard's Lucille. Paul was obviously a fan of that song. It comes up quite a few times in his career. A few more songs from Red Rose Speedway are featured. We've got The Mess, Mary Had a Little Lamb, Mama's Little Girl, and of course the lovely My Love. According to the credits, Give Ireland Back to the Irish is in there somewhere. Again, I didn't really hear it. I've got a feeling it might be at a very low level underneath where Henry McCulloch and Denny Sywell are talking about leaving Wings. If that's where it is, it's so slight and insignificant, I've decided not to feature that one. The Fela Kuti song, I'm not a Fela Kuti fan, I'm afraid, so I did have to look at the credits for that one. That is a song called Don't Gag Me, so that goes in. It's quite a long song, so that contributes to that over 4 hours worth of runtime that I was talking about earlier. Mrs. Vanderbilt and 1985 bolster the Band on the Run roster. All of You is a home demo version. You'll remember the bit because he gets up from the piano and does some funny voices to the camera. He answers the phone going, hello, yes, she'll be back at 3 o'clock. Call back then, or something like that. I've represented it here with the One Hand Clapping version. Also from One Hand Clapping, Soily goes in at this point, which would have been great to have featured on the original album. Then we have Listen to What the Man Says from Venus and Mars. Now, considering how much of a hit Venus and Mars was, well, relatively speaking, it's really quite underrepresented on the original soundtrack albums, so I'm quite happy to partially rectify that here. At about 1 hour and 7 minutes in, there's a jam, but I've no idea what they're playing. If anyone does know, please do let me know. And then I've included the start of Wings Over America, the Venus and Mars Rock Show and Jet medley. This is a bit of a cheat. Now, Jet is heard as part of the Rock Show concert. Linda does do the opening piano riff from Venus and Mars during a sound check. We never hear Rock Show. But I've just decided to include this because I absolutely love this 3-song opening to Wings Over America. It's absolutely cracking. In it goes. Why not? Let It In is part of the live offering, and also Yesterday. So we never actually hear Yesterday, we only hear the opening chords, but it's kind of emphasises quite an important beat of him returning to doing Beatles songs live again, and they make quite a narrative point of that, so definitely worth putting that on the soundtrack, I think. There is a very, very brief snippet of the Ruttles' Hold My Hand, which is all the excuse I need to include a Ruttles song on the soundtrack. Rounding off the live rock show clips is Silly Love Songs. Now that's the only song on this playlist to feature twice. Once, of course, because there's a demo version that opens up the playlist, and indeed the film, and then this other live performance is a separate entity, so I've decided to put it on twice. There's With a Little Luck and Morse Moose the Grey Goose, both from London Town. You hear those during some rehearsal sessions. And McCartney 2 is utilised for a bit of background incidental music. They use Bogey Wobble, Temporary Secretary, and On the Way. Wonderful Christmas Time makes a cheeky little appearance in that section where Paul's arrest in Japan is kind of like shown in news segment footage, and then there's a channel hop bit where they cut to Paul singing Wonderful Christmas Time, presumably on a music programme or something like that, and then they cut back to the news. It's a bit of a narrative cliche, but I think it works quite nicely here. Accompanying Arrow Through Me, Back to the Egg is further represented by Old Siam Sir and We're Open Tonight. And then, just preceding the news of John's death, we get the instrumental of Waterfalls. Forget about chasing polar bears. How about Don't Go Signing LPs of Psychopathic Killers, eh, John? It's not possible to include the wonderful version of You Are My Sunshine by Paul, Linda and Denny, so instead I've included a lovely version by the original copyright holder, Jimmy Davis. And there you have it. So that is every additional track that I've added to the original soundtrack to create the definitive version of this soundtrack. Now, they were never going to release this thing in its whole 4-hour glory. Of course they weren't. But having said that, I do look at this and I think, well, could there have been a little bit of extra wiggle room for a couple more bangers, like, I don't know, Listen to What the Man Said or Jet? Or maybe they could have just expanded it in a more illustrative way, you know, and included I don't know, How Do You Sleep as the counterpoint to Too Many People, or maybe The End by the Beatles. What do you think? What would you have included if you'd had a little bit more extra space on the single CD? Let me know which tracks and why in the comments section. And please do remember to give this video a like and subscribe if you haven't already. And if you're watching on a phone and it's available, I'd really appreciate if you could find the hype button and give that a push. I was really pleased when I found out that I've got to the point where I can get hyped now. I've made it, Mum! I get hypes on YouTube now. I told you I'd make you proud one day. What do you mean, what's a YouTube? There's plenty more to come from me, Apple Jammers, so watch this space. But for now, all there's left to say is ta-ra for now, and thanks for watching.